Ladies and gentlemen, kindly allow me to welcome you to an online talk with a distinguished writer, David Grossman, who recently won the Literature.gr Phrase of the Year Prize 2019. As literature has always held a prominent place in the field of culture, and from every literary book there is sometimes a phrase that can be spontaneously stunned and impress the reader and mobilizes new spiritual forces. The purpose of establishing this award is the promotion of aphoristic sayings, of those writers who still autonomously signal the mobilization even after the end of the reading process. The essence of Literature.gr Prize is the basic and essential purpose of writing, the communication with the reader through reading. Its characteristic phrase unlocks a work, giving the reader the opportunity to take a peek into the book, to see the image of a small universe, which reflects the uniqueness of its creator, their style. Literature.gr attempts to find, through the deeper reading, the inspiration of the author, which is something incomprehensible and magical that comes from big or small causes. The prizes are awarded to the writers whose autonomous phrase reflects the very spirit and promotes a quality of reading experience. The previous winners of the Literature.gr Prize include the late Philip Kerr, Anthony Mara, Greg Jackson, and Laszlo Krasnarchokai. So it is with great honor to be able to present to you today Mr. David Grossman, who won the award of Literature.gr for his terrific book, marvelous book, A Horse Walks into a Bar, translated into Greek by Mrs. Louiza Mizan, published by Psichogios Publications. Also, Mr. Grossman, for this novel, won the Man Booker's International Prize in 2017. His books have been translated into more than 30 languages, and he was also awarded the Israel Prize for Literature in 2018. He's widely regarded as Israel's finest living writer. I'm quoting the phrase, if not for the temptation that is so hard to resist, the temptation to look into another man's hell. Mr. David Grossman, I would like to congratulate you on behalf of the awards committee, Christina, Linardaki, Tessy, Baila, Christos, Ikonomou, Lina, Pantaleon, Kostas, Stoforos. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. I'm very proud to join this team of those who won this prize before me.
Let me continue. Tessy Baila, our editor-in-chief, was the one to engage in this conversation with you. Unfortunately, due to personal issues, she's not able to be online today. Nevertheless, she has prepared some questions for us to help us guide this talk, and of those I have selected a few. So let's see if the time permits if we could be able to address them. Also today, we're very pleased to have with us Katerina Malakate. Katerina, please say hello. Katerina Malakate is a Greek writer. Hello.
Hi, Katerina.
Who is the owner of the biggest online blog called Reading, with more than 100,000 members. She will be our Zoom host for this online session.
Thank you.
So let's begin our talk with a small introduction by me. We're talking about a book which has already been translated into 44 languages. The main character is a comedian stand, but this definitely is not a comic novel. As much as the comedian Dovali releases the most frightening stories of his life, a little souvenir, as he says, the audience cares about his wounds and is tempted to look into another man's hell, but after a while turns its back. The audience does not remain hostage for long in his performance. The audience does not remain hostage and wants jokes and more jokes. Using the stand-up comedy, a text emerges that aims to critically review the society in an allegorical way. Between all the jokes in the book, the reader should pay attention in order to grasp, of course, its deeper meaning. And as David Grossman said in his last visit in Athens last year, invited by Psichogios Publications, the sense of humor is a form of freedom. With humor, we can look at situations from a different perspective. And once we achieve that, we can change things. At the end, the book gives us an unexpected reading pleasure. So, Mr. Grossman.
David, okay? Can we agree on David? We say Mr. Grossman, I look behind my shoulder to see whom you address.
Oh, okay. All right, David. Thank you so much for this. So, David, what feelings does the fact that your work touches the readership over time creates for you?
It's really a very meaningful feeling for me, because I think writing books, in a way, it's an invitation for a dialogue between the reader and the book. And I want my books to touch the hearts of people. When I say to touch the heart, I mean also to touch their mind, their thinking, but also their hearts. And it gives me such a deep feeling of being in the world, being a part in the world, being a part of the life of some people. Who can ask for more? You know, I remember my father, who is this week 95 years old, once told me, when I gave him to read one of my books, a book about a small Jerusalemite symbiotic family that resembles very much my own family when I was a child. And my father read the book and he said, well, David, it's a nice book, but do you think that someone out of our family will be able to understand it? And I thought it's very sweet of him. And now whenever there is a new book coming out from a language that I hardly can decode the language on the cover, and I bring it to my father and I say, you see, Abba, you see, Father, they have understood. And this is actually what I wish will happen to my books, that they will be translated to languages in faraway places, and that my father on each one of them will ask the same question: can someone out of our family understand it? That's what I want.
And you sure have succeeded to that.
I hope so, yeah.
Do you believe in a solitude of the writer? Do you think it can be a creative factor of the writer's power?
Yes, you have to be alone in order to create, in order to get as deep as possible into yourself and not to be distracted by noises from the outside. It's solitude, it's not loneliness. I don't feel lonely when I work. On the contrary, I'm populated with so many characters and so many options of beings. Yeah, this solitude is full of life and full of others, and I like it. I'm now in the beginning of writing of a new book, which I have no idea what it's going to be, where it's going to lead me, and I spend many hours a day alone, walking. I'm a walking writer. I walk from the door to the window, from the window to the door, sometimes for hours, 3, 4, 5 hours. Many kilometers a day in a closed room, because this is probably the way I can think better. And I mean, as if step by step, I'm being revealed the story I'm going to write. And maybe then I will also understand why this topic is so relevant for me, because right now it's hard for me to understand why do I have to write this story. I don't feel it belongs to me. But I know now, and I have quite an experience now, that if I peel it layer after layer after layer, if I get to the place where the story is really being told, then I will see that this choice that right now is strange for me, this choice to write this specific book is very, very relevant for me.
Thank you. You have said that it takes some time after a trauma to start to be able to make fun of it. And yet it has a kind of a healing aspect to it. The fact that people are able to laugh again. Can literature be a healing process for the humanity?
For humanity, I'm not so sure, but for some individuals, yes. For the writer who writes it, yes. You know, I guess that when you ask me that, you referred to something that happened to me and to my family. We lost our son Uri 15 years ago in the war against Lebanon. And at the time, I was writing a novel that actually described what eventually has happened to me and to my son. And I knew from the very beginning that I want to go back to the story I was writing then, the story which was torn to pieces by reality. And I went back after the catastrophe happened. After some days, we have 7 days of mourning, of lamenting in Judaism. I went to my working room, to my study, and I started to rewrite again from the beginning. And I must tell you that the need or the urge to feed my imaginary characters with biography, with anecdotes, with sense of humor, with philosophy of life, with sexuality, the need to provide them with that, it's brought me to feel these things that I've been deprived of. Suddenly I was able to feel again after all feelings have been crushed and shattered. So if you ask me about the individual writer or the individual reader, yes, literature can bring some remedy. Sometimes this remedy is very painful. Sometimes the remedy itself becomes an instrument of torment, because you write something and here you have on the page a verdict against yourself, something that you have not even anticipated, and suddenly there is this verdict against you. But it is almost always these verdicts are significant. That in the end I am grateful to be exposed to them, that I tried to suppress and to deny them all my life in different ways, and suddenly they are here and they are very real and concrete and poignant, and I have to deal with them. And this is again yet another gift, another present that writing can give the writer, but also the reader.
Thank you very much. Do you follow a specific schedule when you write? What are the ideal conditions for you when you write?
Well, actually, I'm very organized in this. We start the day, my wife Michal and me, we start the day every day in a walk at 5:45 in the morning, which is pitch dark still, yes.
Very impressive. That's very, very impressive.
This is, believe me, I also think it's impressive when I uproot myself from my bed and it's outside, it's pitch dark and very cold. But after some moments of walk and talk, we are a walkie-talkie group. We are 4 people, 2 couples, friends. Mm-hmm. And we see the birth of a new day and the sunrise and some wonderful images and pictures of the sunrise that we gather. And then at 8 o'clock in the morning, I start writing, and I write until 1 or 1:30. And then we have lunch, and then I start to do the afternoon work as much as I can. Years ago, I was able to work almost 10 hours every day. Today, it's less than that. But I write as much as I can, and I try to keep a sequence of writing, because this is the most important thing, especially in the first phases of the writing, that you really have to believe deeply in the story you tell, because usually my stories are quite absurd and far-fetched and hard to believe in the first read. And my role as a writer is to make these incredible and unbelievable stories, to make them credible and real and concrete. And the way to do it is to believe in this story, to believe in the unbelievable story. And if the writer believes thoroughly, totally, immerses himself or herself in the story, then there is a chance that the reader will believe it as well. If you do not believe your own story, it's like baking a cake in the oven, but when it comes out, part of it is just white dough. It has not been totally warmed up and became a good cake.
As I mentioned earlier, you are widely regarded as Israel's finest living novelist. You have published numerous novels, children's books, and works of nonfiction, and you've been awarded many times for your literary work. Moreover, you've been a devoted advocate for years. How can a writer combine those two sides with efficiency?
Well, first, may I correct, I do not think I am the finest writer of Israel. There are many very good, wonderful writers in Israel that unfortunately are not translated, but I can be their advocate and tell you that had you read them, you would appreciate very much what they have done. And I work in a very vivid literary environment, and there are several generations now, almost I think 5 different generations, age groups of writers, from people who are more than 90 to people who are more than 20, and they all write together and they all write in Hebrew, which is a topic that we might talk about it in some minutes because it's significant to write in Hebrew in Israel. But you asked about how do I combine the two focuses.
The two sides with efficiency.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I don't feel that they are so different from each other. Even when I write essays, I try to look at reality from my point of view, which is the point of view of a writer. The writer is a person who is open to nuances and insists on nuances and refuses to yield into generalizations and stereotypes and prejudices. This is what we can contribute to the national debate about the occupation, for example, that we insist on the nuances and feel what many people prefers not to feel, and we try to look straight into the sun sometimes because we know that we have to look if we want to get to a real concrete description of reality. And when I write about a certain political situation, I will try to use words that have not been used before to describe it, because I deeply believe that a writer is someone who feels claustrophobic in words of other people, really almost biological suffocation, that you have to break through this suffocation, and while doing so, you provide and you create new words and new nuanced words to describe the situation. So there is not a real difference between me writing prose and me writing documentary books or essays or speeches.
You mentioned that it's significant that there are writers that they write in Hebrew, you said?
Yes. Yeah, we write in Hebrew. This is the mother tongue here. And as you know, the Hebrew is a very ancient language. It counts back almost 4,000 years ago. The Bible, the Holy Bible, is written in Hebrew, most of it in Hebrew.
Yes,
and the fascinating thing is that today, you know, I always think that had Abraham, the patriarch, Abraham, our father, one of the father founders of our people, if he had to sit to the dinner table with my family, he probably would be able to understand at least half of the conversation of my 6-year-old granddaughter. So it's an amazing achievement, because you keep a sequence of the language of over the 4,000 years, and language is identity, and its memory, and its history, and its belonging, it gives me quite pride to belong to this chain of Hebrew writers and Hebrew thinkers and philosophers.
That's absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing. I believe that if Socrates were alive today, he wouldn't be able to understand us, because because we have nothing. But most, of course, the modern Greek language derives from the ancient Greek, but it's not the same. Yeah. So let's continue. When Dovale, the main character of your book, jokes around, he ridicules the political situation in a very strong way, and he talks about existential issues. How did you choose such a character?
I work hard. I work hard to get, bless you, get the essence of the personality of the character. And I think I can tell now that what I do is to bereft myself from many layers of me in order to get and to become him or her, if I write about a woman. I remember some years ago, I wrote this book, To the End of the Land, and the main character is Ora. Ora is a 50 years old Israeli woman, a very typical Israeli woman and very unique Israeli woman at the same time. And I wrote her for 3 years, and I was unable to know her, to know her almost in the biblical sense of to know a woman. And I tried hard and harder and harder, and I was unable to find the heart of her, the heart of the story. And I already was about to give up. I was desperate. I said, if after 3 years I'm unable to decode her, then there is no book, and why should I put all my soul there? I have to admit that I failed. And then out of despair, really sheer despair, I did this strange thing. And I sat to my table and I wrote her a letter, not with a computer even, with a pen and a page and an envelope. And I wrote, "Dear Ora, why are you like that? Why don't you surrender to me? Why are you so stubborn?" And I tell you, the moment I wrote, "Why don't you surrender to me?" it pierced me how idiot I am, because it's not she who has to surrender to me. It is me who has to surrender to her, to the option of Ora inside me, to the option of a woman inside me, to all kinds of options that are even threatening for me. But if I truly, openly surrender, yield to the suggestion that this woman brings into my life, to the ability to be her without any defense mechanism, then suddenly she was there. There she was, Ora. And I hardly had to invent her anymore. I just had to follow her and just to listen to her and to be attentive to her. And she made the book. When I had this, I can almost say I had the book because I yielded to her. And there are so many options of life in every one of us. Every one of us is a combination of so many options, so many walks of life and ways of life and roads not taken. And if we allow ourselves to yield to some of those wonderful options of existence, life becomes so rich, so full, so colorful and vital.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Is it easy for a writer to write a book to show the society the real self of it, as you did with the last one?
It is not easy, and sometimes it can bring me to extreme places, and sometimes the reactions can be extreme. But basically, I feel that if you write truly about things that everybody knows that they are problematic, but only they try to escape from the knowledge or to suppress it. If you put your finger on a wound, but in an empathetic way, not in a brutal, cruel way, then people will listen to you. I'm afraid that today less and less people listen to opinions like mine. I'm a peace activist, and I'm for almost 40 years writing and talking and giving interviews about the situation between us and the Palestinians, the occupation that Israel occupies the Palestinians. I try as much as I can to create a dialogue between Israelis and Palestinians, to create a situation that in the end of it, there will be a negotiation for peace between us and our neighbors, the Palestinians. All these are essential for our being, for our future, for the future of our children, and we are so far away from it. So I keep on writing and writing and writing about it. I know that less and less people listen today because people either got used to the situation of occupation or they despaired from the option of changing it. They found ways to nest, to dwell in this distorted situation. And I try in my writing to remind them that it is a distortion, that we are not meant to occupy and to rule on another people, that it's horrible to subjugate and oppress another people. It's horrible for the occupier and horrible for the occupied. And the two parties, the Israelis and the Palestinians, they taught themselves to collaborate in a horrible, effective way in order to maintain this occupation for I don't know how many more years. It's now 54 years of occupation, unbelievable. So my wish is that sometime in my lifetime, who knows, I will be able to watch the beginning of a dialogue between these two peoples.
Is humor one of the best ways to tell the truth in a book?
Humor is very good for many, many purposes. It's a medication that works for so many problems and pains. And first of all, when you laugh, you breathe. You know, suddenly you are able to breathe, and we do not necessarily recognize how little and how limited we are breathing, how we got used to breathe with one lung only, especially if we live all our life in a reality of occupation, of war, of violence, like Israel and its neighbors do. And as I said before, it's a way to achieve a feeling of freedom, because if you laugh at a situation, if you do not collaborate with the way this situation is imposed on you or formulated for you by different authorities, by the government, by the military, by the police, by the media, by your own fears, if you refuse to collaborate with their point of view, and they try to make you, they take your head like that, look here, don't look to the sides. Humor is a way to look at things from the side, from the unexpected, from the original way of looking at things. And I try as much as I can to have humor in my writings, but also humor in my life. And I tell you frankly, without humor, I don't know how I would have survived this life.
I think most of us without humor would have been survived. How do you see the role of a novelist in the future societies?
Well, first of all, we have to tell a good story, not to use literature in order to create all kind of messages. We have to tell a story, a good deep story about people, about human beings, about the complexity of life, the complexity of every human being, the uniqueness of every human being, all these things that sound almost banal and cliche, but they are so true, and we are so easily give up on them and surrender to existence that is stiff, that is without nuances. And writing can bring us back to these nuances, to these delicacies, to this multi-layeredness of reality. I'm afraid that our world will become more and more dominant by mass media. And mass media, it has a very important role in formulating our life, in telling us the story of our life. But it's also a very tricky thing, the mass media. We think that it's a media that is tuned to the masses, but no, it's a media that makes human beings into masses. And when a human being becomes a part of a masses, he or she, they don't think anymore, they don't feel anymore. They react only to what is imposed on them, only to what is formulated for them. And in such reality, we, the writers, but not only writers, artists in general, musicians, movie people, theater people, every artist, we need to shake the society, to shake the individuals, to force people sometimes to go back to the origins, to the things before they have been distorted by this strange and false reality of the mass media.
And lastly, the Greek readers greatly appreciated your novel called To the End of the Land, where you addressed the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. I will not get into any kind of politics in this talk. This is about literature, even though, of course, writing is also a political act. My question is writing not only a form of expression, but also a form of resistance to external circumstances?
I cannot agree more than that. I think I answered it a little in my previous answers. It is a refusal to collaborate with the official story. Every one of us is a product of an official story that we tell ourselves about ourselves, but every country, especially countries at war, they tell themselves a story or stories, the myths of their creation, and they refuse to give up on this story, and they become prisoners of this story. And writing and trying to get to the heart of the matter, and trying to get, without any protective armor suit, just to be, to stand naked in front of reality. This is an act of resistance. It also can create hope for the future. It also can create a kind of an enclaves of independence, of liberty, of freedom in the heart of arbitrary reality, in the heart of belligerent reality. And I think it's a great thing that one can do this.
Well, Mr. Grossman, David, is that correct? David,
yes, yes.
Allow me to thank you for this talk. It has been really a great honor. Also, I would like to thank Mrs. Katerina Malakate for the great support, and Psichogios Publications, of course, who for more than 40 years educate the Greek readership by publishing the works of the greatest authors of our times in the Greek language.
I agree.
And please accept our greatest congratulations about your work and our warmest regards. I know that you've been to Greece. You came to Greece last year. If you come again, we'll definitely try to come and meet you and to follow your talks around Athens if you come to Athens again. So thank you so much.
Thank you. It was a pleasure, really a pleasure. And I hope to see you in Greece or in Israel.
Oh, I'll be very glad to visit Israel. I'll be very, very happy to do this someday. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, Katerina, as well. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Katerina. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Ciao, ciao.
Thank you, David. Bye-bye.